Good morning. Here's Nicole Menzenbach speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Good morning to our audience in the US and Canada, and good afternoon to our audience in Germany. We would like to welcome you to our networking event, Innovation Bridge North America, Creating Innovation Networks from Science to Startups. My name is Nadine Melcher, and I'm the Department Manager at the Canadian-German Chamber of Industry and Commerce in Canada. Here with me is also my colleague Larissa Seifra, who is Project Manager in the Business Consulting Services Department at the German-American Chamber of Commerce in New York, and we will both lead you through the event. Our agenda today includes welcome remarks, a panel discussion on successful spin-offs in higher education, breakout sessions on the 3 interesting topics AI in medicine, female entrepreneurship and hydrogen, in which we would like you to participate, and finally the opportunity to meet any of our today's participants and speakers from Germany, the USA and Canada directly in one-on-one meeting sessions. To schedule sessions for later already, please feel free to scroll down on your screen and click on the one-on-one session buttons. I would now like to hand over the word to Mr. Markus Schlüter. Markus is Managing Director of Business Metropole Ruhr. He will give the welcome remarks.
Thanks, Nadine. Good afternoon from the metropolis Ruhr. Good morning to Canada, Ottawa and Toronto, and the United States, New York and Boston. It is a true pleasure for me to welcome you today at our online networking event, Innovation Bridge North America, Creating Innovation Networks in our digital platform Matchmaker Ruhr. First of all, please let me express my thanks to everybody who has been involved in the planning of today's event. Our partners, World Factory Startup Center, the Ruhr University Bochum, the University Alliance Ruhr, and the Canadian-German as well as the American-German Chamber of Commerce. You all did a great job so far, so many thanks. Well, being the economic development agency of the Ruhr region, we are carrying out our internationalization strategy for several years now, and we thereby focus on markets and countries that are complementary to our own strengths. On one hand, we will still have a very strong traditional industry sector in the Ruhr region that makes us the B2B hotspot in Germany, and with more than 5 million citizens, the ideal place for international digital startups for scaling their business model. On the other hand, our region today has the highest university density in Europe with more than 300,000 students. We have true experts in various fields of future such as cybersecurity, digital healthcare or hydrogen, as we will see in our today's presentations and breakout sessions later on. One central challenge that we are facing today is how can we generate more new business models and more startups from this unique academic potential that we have. That's why we connect our startups, our incubators, our universities and corporates with international regions of excellence who have managed the same challenge already. Boston and Toronto are definitely extremely good best practice examples for us. In return, and this is the experience from the first events in the scope of our Innovation Bridge North America, like our masterclass that we did at the Collision Conference 3 weeks ago, we, as Germany's perhaps most interesting region when it comes to the opportunities implied by the digitalization shift, are internationally extremely interesting and relevant. The numerous inquiries from other regions in Canada and the United States to join our Innovation Bridge activities show that this project is not a one-way street, but an alliance for benefit. And in times where the transatlantic partnership is experiencing a true revival, we are more than happy that our project can give a valuable contribution. I'm really excited now about the next 2 hours of great discussions, expert insights, and the digital networking possibilities on our platform. Thank you very much again for joining us today and enjoy the conference.
Yeah, thank you very much, Markus. Our next speaker is Professor Andreas Ostendorf. Professor Ostendorf is Vice Rector for Research, Transfer and Early Career Researchers at Ruhr University Bochum. He also is a Professor for Applied Laser Technology there.
Thank you very much, and good day to North America and also to people attending here in Europe. It's my great pleasure to also attend and open the second meeting within the Innovation Bridge North America. The first one was already quite successful with more than 100 participants, and today I'm very glad that we even have more participants than during the first meeting. In between, we had the opportunity to attend the Collision, one of the largest tech conferences worldwide, usually taking place in Toronto, but this time it was also digital. And I had the opportunity due to this to attend most of the conference. And I had some observations which I would like to share with you, and maybe also we can have discussion afterwards. So one of the observations I made, and this is also maybe a difference between our initiatives here in Germany, in the Ruhr area, and also the North American market, is that startups usually think big in North America. Here, our startups, they do very solid research, they do very solid innovation, but usually we think a bit more in the tiny spaces. So those North American startups, I listened to them and it was very interesting. They addressed the big challenges. They addressed the very new innovations, also moonshot projects and so on. So I think this was one of my observations I had, especially with the difference in approaching startups, when startups approach a market. Also, I was surprised that there were so many social actors in that conference. For example, there was the soccer player David Beckham, who had an interview with some stuff from the UN headquarters in New York about children during pandemics. Also very interesting to listen to Chelsea Clinton and numerous other actors. And I asked myself, why are those actors at those tech conferences? And of course, it's not only to make this conference more popular. I think those actors are also, they are an ambassador for entrepreneurship, for new technologies, and also for some cool technologies. And I think this was something which I realized, which we are not so much doing in Europe, and especially also in Germany. Another point is there were more than 100 or even 200 investors at that conference attending. And my feeling was that those investors, they were on the search. They were seeking actively for networks of entrepreneurial companies and for startups. Here it's also quite a bit different. Most our networks of startups, they are seeking for investors. So it's vice versa. And also this should be something which we maybe keep in mind and think about in future more actively. Finally, one observation I also made was about diversity. Every second speaker at that conference, and I'm very glad that we also have this opportunity here today, every second speaker was female. And there was a huge range of diversity among the speakers. Almost all countries worldwide were represented. And they also addressed solutions for humankind. So not for just one specific area, but more in a general aspect. And this was also something which also I think is characteristic for a huge global tech conference like the Collision. And for me, it was a wonderful opportunity to attend that Collision conference. And I'm also looking forward to the finals event we have in the Innovation Bridge North America, which is the Ruhr Summit. Another tech conference, another startup conference taking place here in Bochum as a hybrid conference, hopefully. So maybe also with some type of presence here in Bochum, but it's a B2B conference. So it's also a bit different to what we have heard about the Collision in North America. So altogether, this is quite a complementary and quite an interesting setup we have here with the Innovation Bridge North America. I'm very happy that I was able that I'm still able to attend these events, and very much looking forward also to the interesting program today with the hydrogen, with the medical technologies, and also, as just said, with the female entrepreneurs, very important. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Ostendorf. We will now see a short video in which the region of Bochum will be presented.
Bochum is in the center of the Ruhrgebiet.
Due to the university and the international companies, we have also a lot of international people.
And last but not least, it's the mentality of the people, because they are so open-minded, they're used to diversity, they're so brutally, funnily honest here.
Also the attitude that people have together with this large talent pool is very much unique in Germany and Europe. So and that's why I love doing startup stuff in Bochum.
The Ruhr region is Germany's largest urban area, with a population of 5.1 million. With its 22 universities and approximately 290,000 students, it boasts a highly diversified academic landscape while maintaining a robust industrial core. At Ruhr-Universität Bochum, the largest university in the Ruhr region, excellent research meets excellent entrepreneurship. The World Factory Startup Center supports researchers and students from the idea to the startup. 4 incubators provide an ideal startup ecosystem, from cutting-edge research to actual application opportunities in the region's key markets.
We have this very unique approach of having specialized incubators, specialized per discipline. We can offer an extremely rich ecosystem here with respect to cybersecurity, which is both locally, but also Germany-wide, but also EU-wide, really. So what does it take to turn cutting-edge research into marketable products? We both need the hard factors, infrastructure, but we also need the soft factors, such as right culture, right attitude, which is given by World Factory, by the specialized incubators, and it's working extremely smoothly, and I'm extremely happy with it.
International partnerships and international exchange serve as additional drivers. Our objective is to jointly find solutions for the big challenges of the future, to transform innovations into marketable products.
So my name is Carsten Willems. I'm one of the 2 co-founders of VMray, and we provide security solutions for very large organizations to protect themselves from cyber attacks.
My name is Christian Großmann. I'm CEO and co-founder of Inkpulse, and Inkpulse develops and manufactures shape memory alloys.
I'm Christian, I'm the CEO of FiSec. What we do at FiSec is actually securing the Internet of Things. So everything which don't look like a computer, but there's a computer inside.
One great milestone was setting up our subsidiary in Boston, which we did really early on 5 years ago.
Due to the university and the international companies, we have also a lot of international people here, and this is a very nice ecosystem.
The establishment of the mass production, we were a consultant company that transformed into an engineering provider, and finally to a mass producer of SMA. That was a tremendous step for us.
Personally, I really get satisfaction seeing these very smart young people coming from the universities, later on becoming a full-time employee, and then getting promoted, leading a team, or switching job positions to a complete different department of the organization, and seeing their personal and professional growth. That is really cool.
World Factory Startup Center. From top research to the top of the economy. From Bochum to all corners of the globe. What are you waiting for? Join the World Factory now.
So now we've gotten already a small insight into the Ruhr region and the World Factory, and we hope to hear more about it later. So I would now like to welcome Ms. Nicole Menzenbach, who is Consul General at the German Consulate General Boston.
Yes, hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. When I was asked to give a brief welcome address here at today's event, Innovation Bridge North America, I immediately accepted. First of all, because I'm here together with my colleague from the German Embassy in Canada. And secondly, because I am from North Rhine-Westphalia, actually, and I have a very special connection with what I would consider to be the most beautiful federal state in Germany. So, as Consul General of Germany to the New England states, I have had the privilege to talk to hundreds of creative young minds over the past years. The academic landscape of Boston is world-class, with intellectual powerhouses like MIT and Harvard just a stone's throw away from my office. Impressive students and researchers come up with brilliant concepts and ideas, but face the challenge of transforming their ideas into valuable products. In the same way that incubators here in Boston facilitate the invention of new and exciting products, the World Factory Startup Center promotes young entrepreneurs in Germany and contributes to the startup culture at the Ruhr-Universität in Bochum. We just seen this in this beautiful video. I'm delighted that the Startup Center selected Canada and the United States as the destination for its first networking trip. Not only because North America innovation hubs like Silicon Valley, Vancouver, Toronto, and Boston, just to name a few, serve as the best practice examples for successful startup ecosystems, but also today's conference strengthens the transatlantic partnership. The young companies that are supported by the World Factory Startup Center work on issues that are critical to solving global challenges. One of the upcoming keynotes, as Markus Schlüter already mentioned, is dedicated to hydrogen energy, a technology that will play a key role in reducing our carbon footprint. The Startup Center has also guided numerous startups in the scope of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is critical to protect our democracies and our economies. North America and Europe have both become increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks by criminal organizations and state actors alike. Just a few days ago, with the hacking of the colonial pipeline, we have seen once again how important cybersecurity is to our critical infrastructure. As the two largest blocks of advanced democracies, we rely on our creativity and innovative spirit to protect our shared values, our economies, and most importantly, our planet. This is why I'm delighted that even during this global pandemic, this exchange of ideas between transatlantic partners is taking place. I wish all of us a rewarding experience at today's conference. I hope that everyone attending will learn something new, build new connections, and find inspirations for new ideas. So thank you so much and have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Menzenbach. It is also a pleasure for us to have Dr. Rami Moshtaghi here with us today. Dr. Moshtaghi is First Secretary, Department Head, Economic and Environment at the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany in Ottawa.
Thanks a lot, Nadine. General Counsel, ladies and gentlemen, in the name of Ambassador Spavas and our embassy, I wish you all a very warm welcome to virtual Canada. First of all, let me congratulate you on the choice of topics, AI and health, female entrepreneurship and hydrogen, all strategic and very pertinent topic for our daily work and kind of for our strategic direction as a German embassy in Canada. Just kind of to bring one example up, in a recent study by Adelphi, it identified Eastern Canada, in particular Quebec, as probably midterm the most interesting place worldwide for green hydrogen. So as I said, I think these are really the right topics to discuss at the moment. On top of it, this year, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of our tremendously successful science and technology cooperation with Canada. And so also with that in mind, I couldn't agree more with the perception that startups are indeed one of the most important bridges from science to commercialization and application of innovation. And Canada, in fact, it's a great place to show and tell. Over the past 20 years, Canada has been developing a successful ecosystem for startups with booming hubs in the major Canadian cities, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, but also Edmonton, just to name the champion leagues. the Champions League. There are also other smaller cities that are also first class. Thanks to the public support and incentives like tax incentives, grants, wage subsidy, and loans, a growing tech talent pool with access to venture capital has been created in Canada in the last 2 decades. And just a couple of days ago, actually, a renowned IT expert published an op-ed in a major Canadian newspaper, which entails the prediction that Canada could turn out as the next Silicon Valley. Well, obviously, as a kind of a professional dilettante, I lack the competence to judge the merits of this prediction. But I think Canada's top universities, like the University of Toronto, McMaster's, or McGill, have indeed turned out as cradles of many successful startups in the last years. And there's also a very extensive network of extremely competent and well-placed incubators and accelerators in Canada. I only want to name Mars in Toronto and the Creative Destruction Lab as examples. But, you know, even in smaller places like the Waterloo Kitchen areas, it's full of fascinating incubators that I have had in the last years the possibility to visit, well, before the pandemic struck, in my capacity as the head of the economic section of the German embassy here. There's a clear focus among Canadian startups in IT and finance, but also on clean tech and pharmaceuticals. And again, I think, therefore, the choice of topics for this great event today is really excellent. Canadian venture capital funds have put about $2.2 billion in the first half of 2019 alone into the startup scene, and 5 Canadian companies actually made it to the CNBC's 2019 list. I think that should suffice as a teaser, and I will rather save the details about that for the conversation about the experts. And I wish you all a very great and very successful day of networking and exchange. And let me finish by saying our embassy couldn't be happier to have you all here in virtual Canada in a way today. Thank you so much, and yeah, have fun.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramin Moshtaghi, for the kind welcome remarks. And now we will move forward with our panel discussion on the topic successful spin-offs in higher education. This panel will be moderated by Joan Halpern. She's the director of the Hasso-Plattner Institute in New York. We are very delighted to welcome Joan and our panelists, Dr. Michael Roos, Omar El-Arabi, Lisa Getzler, and Oliver Weimann. With that, I will give the word to Joan and look very much forward to an interesting panel discussion.
Thank you, Larissa, for the introduction, and many thanks to the organizers for putting together an excellent program. Welcome to our panel discussion, Successful Spin-offs in Higher Education. This panel will start by addressing the questions: how do we foster entrepreneurial thinking and creativity among university students? And what are some of the approaches, activities, and course structures? Lisa Getzler, Executive Director of the Baker Institute at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, and Professor Dr. Michael Roos, Chair of Macroeconomics and also involved in entrepreneurship education at Ruhr University Bochum, will address some of these questions. Then we will look at the next stages. Once students are becoming serious about starting a company, how do we help them become successful? What support systems can we offer, and what tools can we give them? DMZ at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada is considered one of the most successful, if not the most successful in the world in this area. So Omar El-Arabi, International and Recruitment Lead at DMZ, is going to tell us what approaches they have taken to help their founders become successful. And then Oliver Weimann, Managing Director of Ruhr Hub and CEO and co-founder of 360 Online Performance Group, works at the interface of the corporate world, startups, and investors, and helps them understand how they can create value for each other. So he will tell us about how his work has impacted the innovation ecosystem in the Ruhr area. So let's start with you, Lisa, followed by Michael, to address the initial question about fostering entrepreneurial creativity at your institutions. So Lisa, why don't you start? Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, and hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I'd like to just provide a little glimpse into where we are, where Lehigh University is. We are in the Lehigh Valley, very much an area like the Ruhr region in Germany. We have a lot of the same characteristics, and I think I would feel equally as home there as you would feel here. So we're not in Boston, we're not in New York, we're not in Silicon Valley, and yet we are still producing students who leave the university with an entrepreneurial mindset and skills and agency to be successful in the entrepreneurial world. So we're developing entrepreneurial talent, and I'm going to talk about the earliest piece of that pipeline. So while all schools do it differently, Baker Institute was launched about 10 years ago, and it was built on a foundation that already valued interdisciplinary experiential learning. That was an important step for us, as it allowed us to move forward with the idea that a culture could be created where entrepreneurial thinking and doing was of value across disciplines. So let me just start by defining entrepreneurship as we do at Lehigh. We see entrepreneurs as those who recognize problems as opportunities to create innovative solutions and execute on them in a sustainable way. So whether that's inside an existing company or starting a new company, the process is the same. The skills are slightly different, but the mindset is the same. And in that same way, we began to recognize that building the culture that was valuable in this regard needed to include three companion processes, as Joanne mentioned: creativity that leads to innovation that then can lead to entrepreneurial action. And so the way we approached that, again, all politics being local and all schools approaching this perspective in a different way, we look at creativity as something that can be not only learned, but often has to be relearned. So students who have gone through the process of getting themselves into a university, like the ones represented today, have gotten very good at doing the right thing, at having the right answers, and that often stymies creativity. So relearning or unleashing creativity is the very first step in this process of culture creation. The second step is what is innovation? At Baker, we use the proven process of design thinking in order to empower and provide the skills needed to become innovative thinkers and doers. The design thinking process, when applied in that culture, is something that allows students to recognize their own ability to become inventors or innovators when they're solving for someone else, and they understand that through empathy, definition, ideation, prototyping, and testing, they will succeed in that regard. And then finally, the entrepreneurship piece includes the skills, yes, the mindset, yes, a way of behaving, and ultimately the confidence to act on all of those things that students have experienced in an authentic, and in our case, immersive way. So again, how do we do it? It's not unlike how others do it. However, all aspects of our programming has authentic, immersive qualities, and students are actually doing rather than hearing. They're acting rather than listening, and it all leads to the confidence to then go into the world and say, I see a problem that needs to be solved, and not somebody should solve it. Rather, I'm going to be the one who solves it. So finally, I will say this. We have a deep belief that the best opportunity for innovation occurs at the intersection of disciplines in a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. So for Baker, we have a two-sided mission. We have a mission to reach every student at Lehigh with the possibility through immersion in the process of entrepreneurial thinking and doing. As well, we offer a platform for those who are ready to create and launch ventures to help them do that. Both are equally supported and equally resourced. So in our case, we say it's not just about being an entrepreneur, it's about entrepreneurial being.
Thank you, Lisa. And just to underline what Lisa said, I mean, we at the Hasso-Plattner Institute, we're one of the hubs of design thinking in Europe. And we found that our students, after going through design thinking, become much more proactive towards their environment and start seeing problems that need to be solved. So design thinking is really a very effective methodology. And those of you who are interested in what Lisa was talking about, creativity, there's a book called Creative Confidence by Tom and David Kelly that you might want to look into. Okay, now, Michael, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Basically, I cannot contribute anything new apart from that what Lisa already told us. So I agree that basically it's about diversity, creativity, new ideas. So that's really important. So in the video that we saw about the university, we heard about the World Factory, and of course we have a lot of coaching activities for people who really want to found their own startup, and we do a great job there. But of course, what's really much more important is to create a culture of entrepreneurship. So basically, we have to attract people into the field of entrepreneurship. We have to raise awareness. So basically, it's like a great funnel, right? So we have to put in many ideas such that we get a few successful ideas out of that process, right? So we have to create many ideas, and that's really important. And I'm really convinced that this works by diversity. We have to bring different people together, people from different backgrounds with different ways of thinking, different knowledge bases. That's really most important. And what Lisa also said is also something that we do here. So you cannot teach entrepreneurship in a classical lecture style, right? So it doesn't work when you have a professor standing in front of a class and talking about how to be an entrepreneur. That's basically not a realistic situation. So what we need is experience-based learning. So we have people have to do something. Students have to solve problems. So what we do is we have a program on entrepreneurship education at our university in order to develop these teaching formats for the whole campus. So our track record is not as long as yours, Lisa. It's a bit shorter. So we only started a couple of years ago, but that's basically what we learned in that process. And the very first thing that we did in our entrepreneurship education program was to analyze what's already there. We have a lot of classes, in particular in my Department of Management and Economics, where we basically teach the skills that you need, right? How to get finance and whatever. But we also have to reach out into the rest of the university. So we have to go all over the campus and create a culture in all departments. We do that by developing hackathons, for example, competitions, networking activities. What we did is to analyze the curricula, and we found gaps in those curricula. So we have a lot of in departments of management and economics. We also have some formats in engineering. But the gaps are, for example, in the humanities. There are also gaps in the natural sciences. There are gaps in law and in medicine. And it's really important also to reach these people, right? And to develop courses and awareness in those disciplines. So that's really important. And maybe to give you some examples how we do that. So, for example, one class that we created is elite sports and entrepreneurship. So that's a very nice format where we bring together top athletes from different disciplines and entrepreneurs. And this is really something that may look odd, but actually it works perfectly well because many students get attracted by the sports part. We do it together with our Department of Sports, and many people are interested in sports. And then when we have these people, we invite these people and they talk. The students learn that there are many similarities, right? So you have to cope with failure. You need a vision, right? You need a lot of discipline. You need a network around you of people supporting you, for example. So all this is very similar, and that's a very interesting learning activity, which is very basic. We do not talk about how to start a business or whatever. It's more about the personality, and it's about a reflection process, whether people actually feel that this might be something for them. That's a very start, right? And of course, then we have other formats for the later stages. And maybe a second example, last semester we had an interesting idea competition. So it was really about ideas. It was not about a business plan or a worked out idea how to start a business. It was more about ideas. So students could submit a short video with a problem and how they would like to solve the problem. And they did a great job. These were very short videos, but they were creative, very nice. And we awarded small monetary prizes for 3 teams. And actually all the 3 teams are about to found a business or have already done so. So one is from a student from psychology. His business is called Funkentruhe in German. So it's chest of sparks. So it's a kind of, he sells little boxes with ideas for parents how to have a good time with their kids, right? It's a very nice thing. We also have a team who have now a small company called FICO Systems. So it's a student from economics and business, and another one, a postdoc researcher from chemistry. And they have a more efficient process for the production of algae-based food supplements. So very different, very nice, also very convincing. So you see, getting different people from different parts of the university together and starting very basic, I think is our recipe for success, and it seems to work.
Okay, thank you, Micha, for these excellent examples. I love the sports course that you've introduced. So now we're going to go to the next step. So once students are becoming serious about starting a company, how do we help them become successful? What support systems can we offer? What tools can we give them? So Omar, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing at Ryerson and DMZ?
Of course, definitely. And thank you so much, Dr. Joanne, and thank you for having us today. Definitely a pleasure. And would love to give a quick overview of what the DMZ does and what Ryerson University does in terms of support to early stage entrepreneurs to help them turn their ideas into reality. As mentioned before, I think it's a common law that we all support experiential and practical learning. How can we provide opportunities for students to implement what they learned within the classrooms in real life experiences and real life examples? And that's exactly how the DMZ started 11 years ago. In 2010, Ryerson University decided to dedicate an organization to help students implement what they learned within the classroom in real life experiences and real life examples. And that's how the DMZ was born. In 2011, students started to go to the DMZ with their ideas, with their business plans, seeking support on how to turn their ideas into actual businesses. And the DMZ started to create an ecosystem to support those entrepreneurs to turn their ideas into businesses. And this ecosystem looked like 4 main services in addition to programming or early stage programming. Our services, we like to summarize them into the 4 C's. So we provide the entrepreneurs in the space with access to coaches. So we have a Rolodex of over 20 plus EIRs, entrepreneurs in residence. Those are serial entrepreneurs, people who've built businesses, sold businesses, who come back and help coach our companies in different vertical industries. We also provide them with access to capital. So if they're looking to raise investment, we have a team dedicated to help companies that are looking to fund and raise to seek investment, whether through angels, VCs, or even government grants. We also provide those companies with access to customers, whether they work in a B2B business model or a B2B2C business model. We provide them with matchmaking, access to corporates, access to customers. And finally, we provide them to access to community. And I think that's the most important part, building a supportive community to support the entrepreneur's success. At the DMZ since 2011, we were able to incubate and accelerate more than 470 companies, 71% of which are still active to this date. So this shows you the success rate that graduates out of the DMZ. Those 470 companies were able to cumulatively raise over $1 billion in funding and create more than 5,000 different jobs for the community. So this shows you the success and the impact that the DMZ has had, not just on the companies, but on the community as well. As I mentioned, we started off as a student-focused incubator, but later on we started opening our doors to startups, not just from Toronto, but from Ontario, then from all around Canada, then from Canada and the US, and now we have companies from all around the world joining us from every country in the world. I would say the focus, the mission at the DMZ is investing in people. And I've heard this before as well. How can we focus on helping high potential entrepreneurs build world-class businesses or turn their startups into world-class businesses? So our focus at the DMZ is always the founder. We always put our founders first. How can we help those excellent founders build world-class businesses? And it's always about the people. The people come up with the great ideas and they're able to execute it. So how can we create a supportive ecosystem to help those entrepreneurs execute upon their ideas? We've had so many great examples that graduated from the DMZ, but also would love to highlight our Basecamp program, which is our early stage program dedicated for high school and university students. It's basically an 8-week summer course teaching them entrepreneurship essentials one-on-one. So definitely design thinking is a huge part of the program. How can they go through the design thinking phase, cycle, understand what ideation is, execution is, how can they turn their idea into an actual working business and create an MVP out of it. Once our students done with the Basecamp program, then they move on to our Launchpad program, which is an online program that the entrepreneurs are encouraged to go through on their own pace individually. After the Launchpad, after they're successful, then the next step would be our Bootcamp program, which is a 6-week program focused on helping those entrepreneurs take their ideas, take their MVPs and find that product market fit and turn their ideas into actual viable working businesses. And the last step would be our DMZ incubator, which is 18 months program. And it helps take those companies that the entrepreneurs have built in the bootcamp phase to a scalable, defensible growth stage company. So usually companies graduate from the incubator program ready to raise a Series A round.
Okay, thank you, Omar. And that's a really great segue into Oliver's work. So Oliver, as I mentioned, your work at the interface of corporate world, startups, and investors. So how has your work impacted the ecosystem in the Ruhr area? And can you tell us a little bit about some of the unique work that you're doing?
Yes, of course, Joanne. Thanks for having me here. I'm Oliver, Managing Director of the Ruhr Hub. The Ruhr Hub is an initiative of, on the one side, the business metropolis Ruhr and 6 other cities of our region, and the Ministry of Economics from our federal state. And our aim is to empower startups from our region to find investors, to find first clients, and helping them to kind of close the gap between university and founding and really getting active on the market. So Omar, your strategies and your methodology is pretty close to what we do or what we accelerate on our stage. Obviously, our history is a bit shorter. And that's kind of a bit combined to my personal story. I was a consulting after my studies and always attached to digital business models. It helped establish companies internationally to spread their business concepts to the German market. And in 2010, 2011, I started in our region and helped first founders to accelerate their business a bit. And in our region, we had one big goal. On the one side, we wanted to change mindset, and mindset should change into 2 dimensions. So one dimension is quantity of startups accelerating in our region, and the second goal is growth in quality of early stage startups, and that's what Omar said as well. I mean, it's about the people. It's not it's not a game of lifestyle. It's not, yes, it's cool having a startup. It's deeper than that. It's enabling people to turn every structure of your life into founding a successful business. And obviously, the people and the students from our region, we are talking about 280,000 people and students. Many of them are really with a technical background. They have the potential, but the Ruhr area was over the last century kind of structured throughout big companies, worldwide known companies like ThyssenKrupp, like RWE, like Energy, E.ON, etc. So our aim as students here were to qualify ourselves for a management career, and that's need to be changed. And therefore, I'm really grateful to have great universities like Ruhr University, Bochum, but the universities in Duisburg, Essen, and in Dortmund as well. Their cultural change is taking place, and now I'm coming to one certain element of our region. We still have these big multinational companies, and we have a whole wide range of established companies, industry focused and service focused. And if these B2B startups elaborate from the universities, then we really need to take them by the hands and to guide them to the first pilots, to help them getting first clients, getting first references. And this is one really necessary step for us, where we at Ruhr Hub are pretty much involved. Secondly, because that works pretty well, we took international startups and helped them to step into the German market in our region. And additionally is quite a good idea, because we can set impulses for established companies, so gain some benefits on that side as well. And on the other side, I mean, it's a slow process, but we could place the Ruhr region as one of the startup hubs in Germany internationally. And this is what we do. The methodology behind that is pretty structured and pretty clear. And just give me the last minute. We try to find the one challenge owner in a big organization. So one challenge owner who we are capable of changing their daily jobs, their daily routine. Because if the one person is really motivated and looking for a solution, then all these kind of hazardous tasks like compliance and legal issues, etc., they're not that strong and not that kind of glumpy anymore if you have unmotivated people who wants to drive the combination and cooperation with a startup. And this is where we probably built some experience over the last years, and where we are good at talking to the management board and to the challenge owner itself.
Thank you, Oliver. And just to add on to one thing that Oliver mentioned about innovation in the region, the technology park of Dortmund is actually one of the largest in all of Europe. So now I'd like to ask actually our first two speakers a question that relates to what you were talking about earlier. So do you think this is a particularly important time to foster entrepreneurial thinking? So Micha and Lisa, and why?
Well, certainly the time couldn't be more important to foster entrepreneurial thinking. Developing an entrepreneurial mindset is going to improve the likelihood of success for every single person in the world who adopts that perspective. So the ability to address the problems that are facing us cannot be done without an entrepreneurial mindset. I will go back to the idea that students today are very much attached to getting the right answer. And while that has always been true, it gets more true each year, at least in my view. And so our ability while they're in school to help them break away from that particular box that they get themselves stuck in through this process and this culture of creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurial thinking and doing is absolutely an imperative for education today.
And just to mention, we don't want anybody to found a company. That's not necessary. But having the mindset, being one of the first employees in a startup, being even open for startups if you start at ThyssenKrupp or wherever, that changes the world at the end.
Yes.
I completely agree. And it's not only about big companies, it's also about public service, the public sector, right? So during the COVID-19 crisis, we observed really in Germany that many things are not running well. We are too slow, it's too bureaucratic, right? So we are not spontaneous or flexible enough, right? And we also have to get entrepreneurial spirit into the public sector, but also, of course, into big companies. So we need it everywhere. The world is changing, whether we like it or not, and we need people who can cope with it, and we who are not seeking security, right? So basically, we want to. Well, we want to be part of that change, right? So we want to manage that change, and that's why we need people who want to do things and who are not afraid.
Not afraid. That is such a key component of this whole thing, the fear of failure, right? We've all talked about it to some degree, but that is a big piece of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we say in design thinking, fail fast, fail forward. You know, and so particularly for Omar and Oliver, but the others can also chime in. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the innovation ecosystem in the past year?
Distance doesn't matter. That's kind of putting it into one sentence. We always had a kind of a big issue here in the Ruhr area because the big investor companies are not located here. So, but nowadays, I mean, if all pitches are going through Zoom or Teams or wherever, distance doesn't matter. And if you look, I mean, you mentioned the technology park in Dortmund. I would mention the cybersecurity specialties, what we have seen already at World Factory. Gelsenkirchen is attached to it. This is brilliant and world-class leadership in technology, and we now need to find ways to drive that into businesses. And the good step is already done, and cybersecurity is just a global issue. So therefore, no matter where you are, if you have the right solution, and if you can kind of transfer your empathy and your motivation, your optimization, then you're the one to cope with. And I would say distance doesn't matter.
I have to completely agree with you, Oliver. I think the best thing that we've learned over the past year is definitely distance does not matter. Pre-COVID at the DMZ, we had designed a special program for international startups that are looking to grow and scale their businesses into North America. And it was a 2-week soft landing program for their startups, and they had to be in person to attend in Toronto. Definitely gave them an experience about how to communicate with the culture, socially, how to be in person, in presence in Toronto, Canada. But definitely post-COVID, what we've learned that distance does not matter. Now all our programs have become virtual and accessible to all international startups online. And we've opened our doors to many startups from different countries around the world. And this has shown us definitely that if you have the right solution, it doesn't matter where you are, you can contribute to the economy, even though if you're 10,000 kilometers away. So definitely something that we learned over the past year is that distance does not matter. Online virtual presence has brought us all together closer, and I think has given more opportunities for startups in areas that lack tools, resources, and opportunities to access those opportunities and tools and resources in other countries, which is something that I would say is the silver lining of this pandemic.
I would, if I may, I would like to add, it's not only about physical distance, it's also about cultural, social distance, right? So for example, in an ecosystem, people have to talk to each other, people from different backgrounds, people from different institutions. So, and this is sometimes not so easy. So Oliver mentioned the big corporations that we still have in the Ruhr area. And of course, it's not so easy for a big corporation to talk to a small startup, right? So these are very different corporate cultures, very different styles of doing things. And I think that's something that we have to overcome. I think this is happening, but it doesn't happen by itself. And the same is true if you talk to people from public administration, right? So they have their own routines, they have their way of doing things, and they used to do that for the past, I don't know, 50 years or whatever. And that's something we also have to change. So it should become very much normal that a startup entrepreneur or somebody from the university approaches these people and says, well, I have an idea, I want to do something. And that's important. And I think the university can contribute to that. We can build networks, and that's what we are actually doing. We have networks in many different directions. So of course we have links to the public sector, but we also have links to other research institutions. We have links to big corporations, but also to small startups. And that's really important. And I think that's one of our important roles in that entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Okay, so we are actually nearing the end of our 30 minutes. And I would really like to thank all of the speakers for your insightful contributions to this topic. And for the audience, you feel free, there's a networking on Matchmaker, you can network with our speakers. So please feel free to do so if you have additional questions. And I will now turn the floor over to our next panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, and to all our panelists for the very interesting insights into the different startup ecosystems in Germany, the US, and Canada. Now we will move from science to startups and look very much forward to 3 different and very interesting keynotes on the topics applications of artificial intelligence in medicine, female entrepreneurship, and hydrogen. So because we are running a little bit behind time, I will quickly hand it over to our first keynote speaker, to Dr. Christian Klaes. He's the Emmy-Noether Group Leader at the Ruhr University in Bochum. Welcome, Dr. Christian Klaes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll try to be brief, even though I already am trying to make something that is already very condensed, even more condensed, but I will try. And let's see if I get this. So I have sharing rights, I suppose. And I will momentarily share my screen once I get it done. Share screen, and there it is. I hope you can see it now. Okay. So yeah, I will try to give you a brief overview of the applications of artificial intelligence in medicine. And I will start with 4 big sectors, I would say, that will be important in the future. One is the diagnosis and big data in medicine. One is rehabilitation. And then we have a big sector of individualized medicine and lifestyle. So medicine is going into the direction of lifestyle here. And in the end, I will talk about smart medical devices and new treatments. There's a lot of different treatments, and I will focus on something that I'm working on in my own lab, which is brain-computer interfaces. So let's start with deep learning and image analysis in medicine. So very around 2012, it started that vision deep learning networks become very good in distinguishing images, and this has been quickly used in medicine also for example, for identifying pneumonia in patients from their x-rays. And the same can be applied to melanoma. So you can basically take a photo from different parts of your skin, and then you can basically have a computer analyze it for melanomas. And same is true for the retina. So you can early on figure out if there are any problems with your retina or ongoing diseases that could be diagnosed very quickly. The same is also true for ultrasound imaging. So you can use ultrasound images and basically let them process by a deep learning network to identify if if your vascular system has some kind of disease. And last but not least, there's also cell types that can be identified. So the images here that I showed for the cell types and also for the lungs, they're actually from Kaggle, from a page from Google that collects a big data set. So this is very important in medicine and will definitely change medicine. There's also the data mining of other medical records. So there's tons and tons of data that is collected, or actually it's not collected in hospitals. It's usually thrown away once the diagnosis is made by the experts and physicians. But this data could be collected, and the same is true for EKG data, and also even for handwritten patient data. So character recognition, and then basically summarizing data from these kind of handwritten or very diverse texts can be done nowadays with networks like GPT-3. In rehabilitation, so to actually come to the application of treatment, we can use AI in rehabilitation, in telemedicine, and also in virtual reality. So here from my own lab, we have a EU project called WAVES that deals with Parkinson and detecting Parkinson use by having people use virtual reality. And we will upload that to one of those online platforms, and on the platforms, people will be able to basically play kind of a game, and then do what you see in the bottom image, like something like a hot wire game, where you will, and all the time the data will be collected and be used or processed by an AI system to determine if you have a tendency for Parkinson and other motor deficiencies later in life. In physiotherapy, there's already, also in Bochum, there's a company from Cyberdyne, which is originally a Japanese company, and they use exoskeletons here for rehabilitation of people that have some, for example, post-strokes and similar things for their lower extremities. And last but not least, we have another EU project that is dealing with exoskeletons. It's called REXO, and here also you need AI basically to power these systems and to assist people in their daily living. Then a big trend is individualization and healthy lifestyle. So you have the Quantify Self movement in the US. I've interviewed a couple of people there. There's also a lot of entrepreneurs in that group. And you all know these handbands. I'm wearing one myself at the moment. And you can detect all, they are nowadays, they have all kinds of sensors. So you can measure the heart rate, you can measure your O2 level, and other things at the same time. You can do whole body MRI. So this is also something that is coming soon. There's a 7 Tesla MRI scanner in Essen, for example. And there is the option as a preventive measure to take an MRI of your whole body and then have a physician look over it to see if there are early signs of diseases. Also, and that's a company from the US, it's called 23andMe, which is doing genomic analysis. I did that when I was in the US, and it's pretty interesting because they are looking at particular snippets of your DNA and tested for variants that are predictive for certain diseases. So this is all coming also to Germany, I hope at least. Then there are applications like this skin check thing. So that's for the melanoma detection that we had previously, but in an app. So you could, instead of going to the physician, you could check your body yourself, which is probably lowering the hurdle for people to actually going to the doctor. You have AI assistants that can help you with your diets, with goals, and basically a more healthy lifestyle in general. And now we come to medical devices. So there is the sector that I am mostly interested in, which is neurotechnology. And there you have neuromodulation, like deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's disease. and my specialty, brain-computer interfaces, exoskeletons, and also, of course, drug development, but I will not talk much about that because that's not my field of expertise. But I'm pretty sure that there's also a lot that will come from gene editing using the CRISPR-Cas system, for example. So a brain-computer interface basically takes information from the brain, decodes it in a computer, and then uses it for controlling an effector. Why would you do that? So basically, you have patients like these tetraplegic patients here that cannot move anything below their neck. This is typically caused by an accident that happened around this C3, C4 level of your spine, and leads to a complete paralysis. And you can basically use these very tiny electronic devices that you can implant in the brain, in the cortex, also in the outer part of the brain. And they are the electrodes are then supposedly very close to the neurons and can directly detect movement signals, because these patients their brains are completely intact. They can think about making a movement, just the signal does not arrive at the arm or the leg. So here we have some results of this from Caltech, where I was before I came back to Germany, where we used the signals from the brain of this tetraplegic patient to control a robot arm and this ball on the screen here. And meanwhile, there's one company actually that has tried to monetize this. This is Neuralink, a company from the all-famous or infamous Elon Musk. And they try to build a whole infrastructure, so a surgery robot, and then the device itself. And recently they published this video here where a monkey that has been implanted with this system is controlling this Pong game. So this monkey has one of those devices implanted, and you don't have these external parts anymore that you've seen in the patient study that I showed you before. So as a summary, I hope I did not go too much over time. We have a big field of diagnosis where AI will definitely make a big change in the coming years. And then we have AI assistance systems for rehabilitation, which is also a very large field. And there's a couple of companies here in the Ruhr area that are dealing with that. And medicine going lifestyle, you have all probably seen that by using Fitbits and other such devices yourself. And then also one big field will be new tech devices like these brain-computer interfaces, deep brain stimulators, and others that will be more present in the future. So by that, I would like to finish here. This is my current lab, and very soon I'll be talked about different incubators, but there will be also a fifth one very soon, the Health Plus incubator, which is supposedly coming some time later this year. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Christian Klaes, for the very interesting presentation on artificial intelligence in medicine. Our next keynote speaker will be Dr. Amanda Elam. She's a research fellow at the Diana International Research Institute within the Babson College and will speak today about female entrepreneurship. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to try to use my time well here. I'm going to talk to you about women's entrepreneurship. I'm going to use some data from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which I've been using for many years now through graduate school and into my career. In addition to my role as a research fellow at DEARY, as we call it at Babson College, I'm also CEO and co-founder of a medical diagnostics company in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. So I am speaking both as an entrepreneur and a researcher when I talk about women's entrepreneurship. So first of all, from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor data from the last report, we estimate that there are about 252 million women globally starting or running new businesses today. And we have about 153 million women globally running established businesses in the world today. So women are out there and they're really busy and they're working. In entrepreneurship research, we distinguish between people just starting and at the earliest stages of starting a business, so less than 3 years old, from the people running established businesses, because when we're interested in understanding how change is occurring, it's not surprising that the newest business patterns are observable in those who are in the earliest stages of starting a business. So in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor GEM data, we call this indicator is TEA, or total entrepreneurship activity. And you'll see that globally, about 10% of women surveyed were participating in new business compared to about 14% of men on average. So women are out there and they're really active along with men. Our data also suggests that women are making a tremendous impact around the globe, creating jobs, generating revenue, driving innovation. Women are almost as active, women entrepreneurs are almost as active as men are with running with internationalization, so running export businesses. And they're also very active as investors out there investing in new businesses around the world. So I've given a few statistics here on engagement, and the important thing to know is that by and large, women are, the gender gap between men and women is actually not large for most of these measures. The one place we do see a big difference is actually in running the businesses with the most employees. Men tend to run larger employer firms. So in the context that women are very active, they're making a really big impact. The question I pose to you all today is, why do the negative stereotypes persist? There is a very active female underperformance hypothesis. That's actually what researchers call it, where people are asking, why don't women entrepreneurs build businesses that are lucrative and as large as men? And a lot of the memes that you'll see out on social media, the way people talk about it, they always focus on discrimination, bias, and unconscious bias is the latest, most popular way of thinking about this. And so I'm just going to offer you some perspective on this, how we think about it from a research standpoint. To start, stereotypes are incredibly important. They change the way we think about ourselves. They change the way others think about us. And there are a number of status characteristics that cue stereotypes. Gender is one of them, and it is one of the strongest stereotypes that we observe in the social sciences. Race, class, but also how we dress, how we present, how educated we are, how articulate we are, what types of occupations we do. These all trigger how people judge us. And the way people judge us changes the way they act around us. It influences our beliefs in ourselves. It changes our actions, which then changes the way people judge us. And in social sciences, we understand that this usually contributes to a cycle of social reproduction. So stereotypes persist. So again, they're important. They influence our credibility, confidence, our alertness to new opportunities, and our fear of failure and our resource mobilization. So when we're understanding and we're studying women entrepreneurs compared to men entrepreneurs, most of that data is happening at the aggregate level. And we understand that there are certain control factors that nobody spends any time talking about that explain most of the differences in outcomes, like the size of the business, the amount of revenue, the profitability of the business, return on investment or return on assets. These types of measures are typically actually explained by the business characteristics. So the size of the business. And I just wanted to put some data out here to share with you today. On average, women are much more likely to start in the starting phases, have businesses with no employees than men. It's not a huge difference, but it's a very clear difference, but it actually varies quite a bit across country. And if you look at Germany, women are much more likely to be solopreneurs. And so when we unpack that, the question is, are these, individuals who are starting businesses out of necessity, or are they people going after opportunity? In the US, for the first time in the last survey, we saw a reverse trend where women were less likely to be solopreneurs. They're more likely to be employer firms, in other words, starting with employees. And so this is an indicator that's really important in understanding gender differences. It's a structural factor. A second structural factor that explains a lot of the differences we see between men and women as business leaders and entrepreneurs is actually industry segment. Women and men tend to choose to start businesses in very different industries. And this is really important. You'll notice here the patterns. Women are much more likely to start in wholesale retail, and they're overrepresented. Women entrepreneurs are overrepresented in government, health, education, and social services. And this is something that's really well understood. Women are more likely to prioritize the creation of social value in starting a business, whereas men have a tendency to prioritize economic return, really monetizing a business and making a lot of money out of it. Society needs both. We need entrepreneurs who are out there to drive economic growth, but we also need entrepreneurs who are out there to solve social problems. And so this is a really important measure. Importantly, when we look at ICT, women are woefully underrepresented in the startup stages in internet, computers, technology category. The reason why that matters is because that's where most of the capital goes. So when we look at global financing trends in venture capital, the majority of it goes just to software, and other technologies. So when we're looking at statistics, and this is a real one, women founders receive about 2.5% of all the VC capital out there. And that's largely because of business size, industry. It is not about whether they're capable business leaders. It's that they are running businesses that investors typically don't take an interest in. Now, this is changing as impact investing and women-focused investing come out. Another factor that's really important to understanding the statistics that you see or that come across your feed is that the definition of who is in the study population is really important. This is a picture of my diagnostics company team here. I am not a majority owner of the company, but I'm part of a team where we own each a piece of equity. So I'm not a woman-owned company because I don't have 51% or more of the company, but it is a woman-led company. So what are we really studying? In the US, when we analyze the labor data, the company data that we have a tendency to study women majority owned, men majority owned, and then the jointly owned companies, we omit them from the analysis. So think about that when you're reading all of those statistics about men and women owned businesses. If we're only dealing with aggregate data, we're comparing apples to oranges. Definitions matter, industry, firm size, and what our outcomes matter when we're considering who's making an impact. What are we really measuring? So I want to debunk the stereotype, and I think it's important for more than one reason. In 2019, Boston Consulting Group came out with a report where they wrote that if women and men participated equally as entrepreneurs, the global GDP would rise by approximately 3 to 6%, boosting the global economy by 2.5 trillion to 5 trillion. And I think that it's really important for us to be sober in policy making and when we're running entrepreneurship programming to understand that unless we're addressing those structural factors, we're probably not going to change those aggregate numbers, those apples to orange numbers very well. So we really have to be careful about the idea of stereotypes, the structural bias when we're developing programming. At Babson College, we run a lot of programming for women entrepreneurs, the WIN Lab program. We have a Be Well program for Black women entrepreneurs. Now, the demand for this kind of women-focused programming is incredibly high. And to understand why that is, it has a lot to do with the stereotypes. But if, as a society, if we're going to address the stereotypes, we have to address those structural factors. So I really want everyone to know that when we compare similar men to similar women, the outcomes aren't very different. So if a man and a woman are both starting a similar type of business in a similar type of industry, those founders, it's really the market that will most likely, the product market fit that will most likely predict their outcomes. So we've got to debunk those stereotypes because women are discounted. And we have a lot of data to show that especially in high discretion funding decisions like venture capital, there are marks against women. Will people listen to them? Will they be strong enough leaders? Are they articulating things in the right way? Do they have the endurance to stick it out? Trust me, fellas, women have all the endurance they need to stick out a business startup. Those stereotypes also mean that investors may be missing opportunities because it isn't just the women founders that are discounted. It's often the markets for female products. In the world of technology, femtech is probably one of our strongest examples of an area where the market is huge, the dollars should be invested, and the male-dominated world of venture capital is reluctant. And again, think about these data when we're looking at policy solutions. We really need programs like STEM programs that address those structural differences. And that's all. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for the very interesting insights and yeah, for sharing those with us. Before we jump into the breakout sessions a little bit later, I will quickly hand it over to our last keynote speaker, to Trevor Best. He's the CEO of a hydrogen startup in Houston. And Trevor, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen for the presentation. And awesome. So, hey, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm very excited to be speaking as part of this Innovation Bridge North America conference. And today we're going to be talking about syzygy plasmonics, incredible new technology, and hydrogen. And to get started, I think it's good to take a step back and kind of look at the world and what's happening. Things have changed a lot in the past year and a half. And the world has really gotten fired up about this fight on climate change. And what we're seeing is that these hard to abate sectors are going to be becoming battleground on climate change. You have things, like, light duty vehicles, like passenger vehicles, and electrification and batteries are working very well. You have energy generation and solar and wind power are working very well. But in these hard to abate sectors, they're called the hard to abate sectors for a reason, because it's very, very challenging to eliminate these emissions from industrial processes, from heavy transportation, and from chemical manufacturing. This is especially important for this conference because historically these sectors have been powered by coal, oil, and natural gas. And North Rhine-Westphalia has been a primary energy producer for many, many decades now, for close to 100 years. And especially as a big coal mining region, it's important that you stay on top of what's coming next, because the world is looking for what comes after coal, oil, and natural gas. And so what a lot of people are thinking is going to tackle this problem with these hard to abate sectors is hydrogen. Hydrogen is especially useful because it has no carbon atom attached to it. It can be burned for heat. It can be run through a fuel cell to generate electricity. It is a very important chemical feedstock that has a lot of use and utility in future industry. And so if you've heard of the recent hype around hydrogen, the reason is because it is probably the best solution that planet Earth has for these hard to abate sectors, for this big coming battleground in the fight on climate change. However, the cost of hydrogen is preventing mass adoption and decarbonization. So right now, hydrogen just cannot compete economically with those other options. And this is where syzygy comes in. So our company is making a completely new type of chemical reactor that will reduce both cost and emissions from hydrogen production. So our reactor is powered by light from LEDs and renewable electricity, instead of being powered by heat that typically comes from combusting these fossil fuel feedstocks. And so this allows us to eliminate emissions by running the reactor on renewable electricity. And because we don't need high pressure, high temperature, we can reduce cost. We also have what we call feedstock flexibility. So we can make hydrogen from a number of different feedstocks. Currently, we can make hydrogen from ammonia, and we can actually decarbonize methane. And so we can use methane from anthropogenic sources like landfills, dairy farms, wastewater treatment plants, and we can make hydrogen out of it. And ultimately, this supports our vision of reducing a gigatons of CO2 emissions by 2040. So to get in a little bit into how our technology works, we have some very distinct advantages over the status quo. As mentioned, with a traditional chemical reactor, you're feeding in some kind of fossil fuel feedstock, you're burning that to produce heat. Unfortunately, this also produces carbon emissions. This also makes the reactor very high pressure, high temperature. And that means you have to build these reactors out of very expensive materials. Like a good example is Incolloy 800 HT. It's about $42,000 a ton. And looking at the operating costs long term, these fossil fuel inputs are going to be impacted by carbon pricing, and so their costs are going to go up. On the contrary, our reactor, at the reactor wall where the LEDs are, it is actually room temperature at atmospheric pressure. So very, very mild operating conditions inside our reactor. This allows us to build it out of things like aluminum and glass and plastic, which is a dramatic reduction in capital cost to build our equipment. And finally, costs for renewable electricity are trending very strongly downward. And this is a trend that we are very happy to ride to success in ultra cheap hydrogen. All of this is made possible by our breakthrough innovation, which is high performance photocatalysis. So a photocatalyst is a material that can use light to perform chemical reactions. This technology was developed here in the United States at Rice University in Houston, Texas. It is highly validated. We've been published in the journal Nature 3 times, in the journal Science once. Nature and Science are 2 of the most prestigious academic journals on the planet, so we're very pleased about that. And we've been awarded grants from the Department of Energy and the National Science Foundation. Even more exciting, this is a platform technology. It is broadly applicable to many different reactions. And so we can also do CO2 processing. So we can take CO2 and turn it back into interesting things like methanol. In fact, we just won a National Science Foundation grant a few weeks ago for turning CO2 into methanol. And we can also do things like synthesize ammonia and many, many other reactions. So it is more than just hydrogen. To go a little bit more into detail how the technology works, I've got a quick video that I will show. Awesome. So our first go-to-market will be on distributed hydrogen. As mentioned, we can make hydrogen from different feedstocks. We will be making green hydrogen from ammonia. So this is ammonia splitting. It is especially interesting in Asia and areas that need to import their energy. We are also able to make blue hydrogen from a process we are calling double reforming. We take in the methane and we reform that methane to get hydrogen, and then we reform the CO2 to get methanol. And this enables us to create a system in which no emissions go into the atmosphere. And so it offers best-in-class cost and emissions. Whenever I talk about cost and emissions, we have very detailed techno-economic models. You can see, very, very low costs for our double reforming system, slightly more for ammonia splitting, and also best-in-class emissions when we look at a life cycle basis that takes into account, things like manufacturing solar panels and all of that. So earth to end user, all the emissions across the value chain, we absolutely take that into account and we drive that number as low as possible. And why Germany? Why Metropole Ruhr? We believe that is an ideal location because of geography, history, access to talent, your support for innovation. We're evaluating where our European base of operations is going to be in 2023 and beyond. So if you are interested in hydrogen, or you have waste methane that you'd like to do something with, or you're interested in ammonia, let's talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you also very much to all our keynote speakers for the very interesting insights into the 3 topics today. We would now like to go further in depth with them and discuss them in the breakout sessions with our audience. To the audience, we would like to ask you to scroll down on your screen in the stream modus, and just scroll down where you see the workshops and enter the sessions via the black button on the lower right-hand corner. It says open session, or it says in German, it says the session öffnen. So please scroll down on your screen, enter one of the sessions you're interested in, and we look forward to interesting discussions with you. Also, the sessions, because we're running a little bit late in time, the sessions will still go on for 30 minutes. So this means we will all meet back in the main session at 11:30, and this is 5:30 in Germany. So yeah, we look forward to the summaries later, and we hope you enjoy the talks with our experts.
Test, 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 Test. Ja, das funktioniert.
Okay, ja, kein Problem. Ich dachte, es geht schon weiter, deswegen war ich direkt da. Okay, bis gleich.
Der ist ja, läuft. Ich habe den jetzt geübt. Bei mir läuft er. Und dann kannst du den nämlich gleich stoppen lieber und dann wieder drauf drücken. Ja, ist doch gut. Dann mach du auf Stopp und dann kannst du den gleich starten. Ach so.
Diese Aufmerksamkeit.
Ja.
Soll ich beenden? Was willst du sagen? Zitieren meinst du wirklich?
Ja, ja, beende mal. Wir starten dann, ja, wir starten ihn um 17:30 Uhr.
Ja, noch nicht gemacht. Ja, für 3 Minuten fertig. Voraussichtlich werde ich an der Termin nicht teilnehmen können.
Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed very interesting discussions at the 3 different breakout sessions. Now I would like to ask our moderators, Mark, Jessica, and Niels, to give a short 2-minute summary of their breakout sessions. So we will start with session 1 and Mark Feilerman. Or probably we will jump to session 2 first and start with Jessica.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we had a very interesting talk, and I would say the most, so the main point was that there are not so many differences between female and male founders in general, because we have just individuals with strengths, with weaknesses, and most of the teams and the startup teams, they benefit from diversity. So from the different strengths and weaknesses, every person brings into it. So our result was, in general, it's very good to have diverse teams, and also that we need some tools, some help also for women now to overcome some structural problems. So, for example, that you get more critical than positive questions in VC funding interviews, and that it is our responsibility at different stages and at universities, for example, but also at schools, to teach women to stand up, to prepare themselves for the competition out there, and to empower them to stand up for themselves and to be bold, and and don't be afraid in a way. And I would say this is the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Next will be Niels with session 3.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. In our breakout session, we worked in detail the field of action for hydrogen industry, from research to innovative application. We looked at all strategies in that sector. In particular, we focused on the challenges of realization, the technology. One thing is there really important. We need an honest and open debate about the opportunities and challenges of the new technology. Only this approach will enable a rapid market ramp up and the adoption of these strategies. The links between Europe and America, between the Ruhr region, the metropolis Ruhr, and the regions of America are essential in this regard. Both countries are dependent on cooperation because only cooperation creates the transfer from innovation and the production of these important resources. For example, Trevor told it, Trevor Best, Mr. Apfel told it, we have a big gap between research and application, so that I can say that we have to connect both parts, the research part and the industry, that both sectors can learn from each other. Another important point was that startups need financial support and support from the political side, that we need a commitment between both parts, that they build a new infrastructure for hydrogen, that we can use the pipelines, the gas pipelines, and put the hydrogen into our infrastructure in the Ruhr region, and that we create a connection between these parts, so that we work step by step for a creation of a hydrogen value chain here in the metropolis Ruhr and in North America too, because no region can manage it alone. Germany too, because we need imports of hydrogen to build up this new industry in our region here. But I think that the breakout session shows out that we have the right partners and the right motivation there to create this future together. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Niels. Now, last but not least, Mark Feilerman with a short summary of session number 1.
Sorry, I was late. We were actually finishing up our in-depth discussion of AI in medicine, which is an extremely broad topic. And we endeavored to discuss it in bite-sized opportunities, really under the framework of opportunities of AI in medicine and the plethora of opportunities that there actually are, and then the challenges. So we discussed multiple applications for artificial intelligence, ranging from Dr. Claes's work in rehabilitation and computer brain interfaces. So literally controlling objects in the exterior world with your mind, mind-blowing, in fact, and quite revolutionary. To a young soon-to-be doctor who has a startup that is developing a voice-to-text module, basically to improve documentation, care coordination, etc., in the hospital setting. To an experienced oncology professor, or doctor rather, who has a startup matching oncology with oncology patients, so cancer patients, with clinical trials. And so the opportunities for AI in medicine just abound, right? But there are many challenges that we discussed. And two of them that I'll just highlight are the problems and challenges of getting data, the data sets necessary to actually develop the AI algorithms, and then the adoption hurdles from a clinical standpoint. So, clinicians looking at these AI tech-enabled enhancements and saying, geez, how does this help me as a clinician provide better care? And we all came out on the side of the coin that AI has many more benefits and opportunities than challenges, but it was a discussion that arguably could have gone on for another 3 hours. So happy to have been a moderator, and hopefully that summed it up.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks to all our moderators for the short summaries. So now you will have the chance to meet with interesting business partners in 15 minutes one-on-one meetings. So to schedule the meeting, please go to the main page of this event and click on the button Agenda. Scroll down to one-on-one meetings and click to Open Session. On the right side, you will find potential business partners to schedule the meetings with. So with that, I would like to thank you all for participating in our event. We hope you enjoyed today's event and will join us for future events. One of our upcoming events is, as already mentioned, the Ruhr Summit at June 29th and 30th. It's the biggest B2B startup event in Germany. Thanks again to all our speakers today. It was a pleasure to have you at our event and to hear your valuable insights. Thanks again to all of you for attending the event, and have a great rest of your day.